Have you ever laid awake at night and asked yourself a question you were too afraid to say out loud? Something so simple, yet so terrifying that it shook the foundation of everything you believe? A question that starts like a whisper, but quickly becomes a storm in your soul. If God created everything, then who created God? That question has haunted not just children, but scholars, scientists, pastors, and even once devout believers who silently walked away from their faith, not because they hated God, but because they couldn't answer that one question. Maybe you've heard someone ask it in a debate, with a smirk on their face and pride in their tone, as if it were the final nail in the coffin of faith. Maybe you've even asked it yourself, not out of arrogance, but out of desperation, out of the ache to know if your prayers mean anything, if the being you call out to when you're broken is real, or just another comforting myth we invented because the silence was too heavy. And perhaps what makes it worse is the feeling that you're not allowed to ask, that questioning the Creator is somehow betraying Him. So you sit in church, nod at the right places, say Amen when everyone else does, but inside, your mind is on fire, and your heart is drifting. And the worst part? You feel alone in it. But what if I told you that this question has an answer? Not a shallow one, not a just have faith kind of answer, but an answer that is deeply biblical, theologically sound, and intellectually grounded, one that can stand up not just in a sermon, but in a courtroom of reason. What if the answer to who created God is not only out there, but it changes everything? Stay with me. Because this isn't just a theological argument. This is a matter of eternity. And maybe, just maybe, it's the answer your soul has been waiting for. You've heard the name before, I Am. It sounds simple, maybe even vague, but it's one of the most profound declarations ever spoken in human history. When Moses stood trembling before the burning bush, asking who was sending him, God didn't say, "Tell them a higher power sent you," or "Tell them the God of your ancestors will help you." He said, "I am who I am." No explanation, no origin story, no beginning. Just being, existence itself. This wasn't poetry, this was theology in its purest form. God didn't say He was, as if He had a beginning. He didn't say He will be, as if He's becoming something more. He said, "I am," because He's never not been. No cause, no creation, just eternal presence, absolute being, without starting point or ending line. And then, thousands of years later, a man stands in the dusty streets of Jerusalem and says something so radical, so offensive, that the religious elite picked up stones to kill him, not because he performed miracles or preached love, but because he said, "Before Abraham was, I am." He didn't just claim to be older than Abraham. He claimed to be the same I Am from that burning bush. Jesus wasn't offering metaphors. He was declaring identity. He was standing in the very place where time and divinity meet and saying, "I didn't come from God. I am God." No one makes that claim unless it's true, or unless they're a madman. And if it's true, then we have to deal with the consequences. See, the question, who created God, assumes that God is a thing, like trees, planets, or people. But the God of the Bible isn't a thing at all. He's not part of creation. He's the source of it. He doesn't exist in time. He created time. He doesn't take up space. He authored it. He's not made of matter. He speaks it into being. You can't ask, who made God, any more than you can ask, what color is logic, or where is the edge of truth? The question collapses under the weight of what God actually is. So the biblical answer isn't dodging the question. It's revealing that the question itself is too small for the reality of who God is. You can't use created categories to dissect the uncreated. You can't put eternity in a test tube. That's not weakness, it's just logic. And here's the breathtaking part. This eternal, uncaused, self-sufficient being. He knows you. He doesn't just exist beyond time. He stepped into it. He entered our suffering. He chose to be born, to breathe, to bleed, to save the very people who ask if He's real. So when you ask, who created God? Remember, He's the only one who can look at nothing and speak everything. He's the only one who was never made because He's the one who makes meaning. And maybe the reason your soul aches with that question is because it already knows the answer. It just wants permission to believe it. So if God wasn't created, where do we even begin to reason about his existence? Let's take a step back. Look at the world around you. Mountains, galaxies, the curve of a fingerprint, the laws of gravity, the very neurons firing in your brain right now. Everything we see operates by cause and effect. Nothing just appears. A tree doesn't grow without a seed. A building doesn't stand without a blueprint. A breath doesn't come without lungs and oxygen. Every effect demands a cause. Now ask yourself, what about everything? The universe, time, space, energy, where did it come from? Some will say it's always existed. Others suggest a spontaneous explosion from nothing, but nothing can't do anything. By definition, nothing has no properties. It can't create, it can't expand, it can't decide. So if the universe began to exist, and virtually every modern physicist agrees that it did, then it must have had a cause outside of time, space, and matter. A cause that is immaterial, timeless, powerful, and purposeful. Sound familiar? This is what philosophers call the cosmological argument, and it's far from religious fluff. Thinkers like Aristotle, Aquinas, and even modern atheists wrestled with this. They agree. You cannot have an infinite chain of causes stretching backwards forever. That's like trying to finish a book where the first page never arrives. Eventually, there has to be a first uncaused cause, something that begins the dominoes without being one of the dominoes. And the only candidate that fits all the requirements is God. But let's be honest. Some people push back. They'll say, why can't the universe be eternal? Or why can't there be a multiverse? And here's the problem. Those are not answers. They're just more questions in disguise. If the multiverse exists, where did it come from? If the universe is eternal, why does it appear to have a beginning? You're just moving the mystery one step further back without ever solving it. It's like covering a hole in your wall by putting a mirror in front of it. Sure, you can't see it now, but it's still there, gaping and unanswered. And here's where it gets deeply personal. If there is a first cause, then that means your existence is not an accident. You're not just stardust rearranged by chance. You're not here because the laws of physics blindly burped you into being. You were thought of. You were intended. You were created. That changes everything. Because if God started the universe, then he also sustains it. If he caused your beginning, then he's not absent from your present. And if he is the first cause, he can also be the final hope, the one who doesn't just explain why things exist, but why you matter within it. So no, God was not created. But through him, everything else was, including you. If God caused everything, including time itself, then he must exist outside of it. And this, right here, is where most human thinking breaks down. Because everything we know is wrapped in time. You were born at a certain moment. You age by the clock. You make decisions based on what's coming, and you grieve what's already gone. Your entire life is a line. Past, present, future. So how can we even begin to understand a being who isn't bound by that line? The Bible doesn't shy away from this mystery. In fact, it confronts it directly. Psalm 92 says, "From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Not you were, or you will be, but you are." Even when the mountains hadn't formed and the stars were still silent, God was there. More than that, God was never not there. St. Augustine put it this way, God created time, and before time there was no before. He wasn't being clever, he was being honest. If God made time, then he doesn't move through it like we do. He doesn't get older, he doesn't wait, he doesn't forget. He isn't surprised. All moments, past, present, future, stand equally before him. He sees the beginning and the end at once. He doesn't look back at your pain. He is present in it. He doesn't wait for your future. He is already there, gently preparing the way. This isn't just philosophical fluff. It's profoundly practical. Because if God is outside of time, then he's never late. You may feel forgotten. You may feel like your prayers hit the ceiling and fall back down. But from his vantage point, your life is not unraveling. It's unfolding. That heartbreak that shattered you 5 years ago, he still sees it. That breakthrough you're begging for, he already holds it. To him, it's all one tapestry, woven with precision, not chaos. Now, here's a challenge. Some people say this makes God too distant. They argue, if God exists outside of time, how can he care about my moment-to-moment life? But that's what makes Christianity so radical. Because the eternal God didn't stay out there. He stepped in. He entered time. The one who holds the stars chose to be born in a manger. The timeless became timed. The immortal tasted death. Jesus wasn't just a representative of God. He was God stepping into the very timeline he created, experiencing it with us. He wept. He waited. He bled. He rose. And in doing so, he forever anchored eternity to your calendar. That means your Tuesday morning matters to God. Your worst day is not outside his reach. Your future is not outside his hand. But not everyone agrees. Some theologians propose process theology, the idea that God changes with time, that he learns, adapts, evolves. It makes God feel closer, more relatable, but it also makes him fragile. And let's be honest, we don't need a God who's figuring things out. We need a God who already knows, a God who sees the ending before we even begin, a God who isn't controlled by time, but who uses time to grow us, shape us, and bring us home. So let me ask you this. What would change in your life if you truly believed God is never early, never late, just always present? Would you trust him more? Would you panic less? Would you wait with peace instead of fear? Maybe the deeper question isn't, when will God move? Maybe it's, can I surrender to the one who sees what I can't? Because if God authored time, then no part of your story is outside his page. Let's be honest. If you've ever brought up the idea of an eternal, self-existent God in a university classroom or in an online debate, you've probably been met with a familiar smirk and a heavy dose of skepticism. Atheists often raise what seems like a clever counter. If everything needs a cause, then God must need a cause too. You can't just make an exception for your God. It sounds airtight, until you pause and look closer. Because this argument is based on a misunderstanding of the premise. Christians don't claim that everything needs a cause. We claim that everything that begins to exist needs a cause. The key phrase is begins to exist. That's the distinction. God never began. He is, by definition, eternal. He exists necessarily. Unlike the universe, he is not contingent. He doesn't rely on something else to exist. So the rule doesn't apply to him. Not because we're making an exception, but because he belongs to a different category altogether. This is not intellectual trickery. It's standard logic in metaphysics. Philosophers call God a necessary being, something that must exist for anything else to exist. Everything else is contingent. It could exist or not. But without the necessary, nothing else can stand. Now, some will push further. But isn't that just a God of the gaps argument? You don't know what caused the universe, so you insert God as a placeholder. Fair question. But again, that's not what's happening here. This isn't about plugging God into a mystery. It's about identifying the kind of cause required for the effect we observe. Think about it. The universe had a beginning. That's not theology, that's cosmology. It's backed by everything from the Big Bang to the second law of thermodynamics. So we ask, what kind of cause could bring the entire universe into being from nothing? The answer must be timeless, because time didn't exist yet. Spaceless, because space didn't exist. Immaterial, immensely powerful, and personal, because impersonal forces don't choose to create. That's not a gap, that's a profile, and there's only one match. Still, some go another route. They propose multiverse theory, that maybe there are infinite other universes, and we just happen to be in the one that works. It's imaginative, it even sounds scientific, but it's not evidence. It's a hypothesis without a shred of direct observational support. More importantly, it still doesn't explain the origin of all reality. Even if multiverses exist, what caused them? You haven't removed the need for a first cause, you've just hidden it behind a cosmic curtain. And now, the hardest objection of all. If God exists, why doesn't he make himself more obvious? This one isn't academic, it's emotional. It comes from people who've waited in the dark, prayed through silence, and wondered if they were crazy to believe. But the Bible addresses this too. Romans 1 says that God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made. In other words, creation itself is God's introduction. Not a billboard in the sky, but a whisper in the wind, a signature in your DNA, a longing in your soul that refuses to be satisfied by anything else. So why doesn't he force himself into our minds? Because love requires freedom, and faith requires choice. God doesn't hide to torment you. He veils himself just enough to let your heart move freely toward him. He wants relationship, not robotic submission. But here's the real question we have to face. What kind of proof are you waiting for? And would it really change your heart? If God wrote your name in the sky tonight, would you surrender? Or explain it away as coincidence? If he healed your body, would you follow him? Or just thank chance? Sometimes the issue isn't that God hasn't shown enough, it's that we've already decided not to see. Still, there are honest doubts, and those deserve honest answers. That's why exploring this question matters, because when you push past the slogans and truly engage the evidence, you don't find a lazy faith. You find a reasoned trust, one built not on blind belief, but on deep reflection. So yes, atheists have questions. So do we. But the difference is, we also have hope. If you're watching this, you might not even identify as Christian. Maybe you're curious, skeptical, or shaped by another tradition altogether. That's why it's important, vital even, to ask, how do other worldviews answer the same question? Who or what created God? Let's begin with Islam. Muslims strongly affirm that God, Allah, is uncreated, eternal, self-sufficient. On the surface, this sounds very similar to Christianity. In fact, both faiths share the idea of a singular, necessary being who is above time and matter. But here's the difference. In Islam, God is radically transcendent, but not relational. He is unknowable in essence. You can submit to him, serve him, fear him, but you cannot truly know him as Father. There's no incarnation, no cross, no divine descent into human time. So while both agree that God is uncreated, only Christianity claims that the eternal stepped into the temporal, not just to rule us, but to rescue us. Now consider Hinduism. Here the picture shifts entirely. Reality is often described as cyclical, not linear. Many Hindus believe in a supreme reality, Brahman, that is eternal, impersonal, and formless. But Brahman isn't God in the personal sense. It's more like a divine energy or ultimate consciousness. Everything, including you, is simply a manifestation of that force. There's no need for a who created God question, because individuality and personhood are illusions. Your goal is not to know God, but to realize you are God, or at least a drop in the divine ocean. It sounds mystical, but here's the tension. If God is everything, and everything is God, then evil is also God. Pain, injustice, suffering, all part of the divine. There's no moral separation, no personal rescue, no savior, just endless cycles of reincarnation, and a vague hope that you'll finally escape. Agnosticism and spiritual but not religious worldviews offer something different. Many people today aren't atheists or religious. They believe in something higher, some energy, intelligence, or force that started it all. But when you ask what that force is, or what it wants, or how we should live in response, the answers become vague, if not silent. God becomes a cosmic question mark, useful for mystery, but not for meaning. He, or it, feels distant, impersonal, and ultimately powerless to deal with your guilt, your wounds, or your death. Now let's pause. This isn't about winning a debate. It's about facing a truth your soul already suspects. You don't just want a creator. You want a father. You don't just want a force. You want a face. You don't just want a cause. You want a cross. And that's what makes the Christian answer so different. The God of the Bible is not only uncreated, he is unshakably personal. He is eternal, but also Emmanuel, God with us. He created time, then entered it. He wrote the story, then became a character in it. He doesn't just explain your beginning, he redeems your ending. Still, there are those who object. They argue, isn't Christianity just another cultural myth? One more attempt to explain the unknown? But myths don't hang on history. Christianity does. Myths don't bleed in Roman provinces under documented governors. Jesus did. And myths don't rise from the grave with over 500 witnesses. Christ did. That doesn't mean you don't need faith. It means your faith isn't floating. It's rooted in reality. So here's the deeper question we rarely ask. What kind of God are you hoping exists? And why? Would you prefer a distant force that never intrudes on your life? Or a holy king who offers mercy, even if it costs him everything? Maybe the real tension isn't between religions. It's between the kind of God we want and the kind of God who is. So who created God? No one. Because if someone created him, he wouldn't be God. The moment you have a God that had a beginning, you have a God that ends. And that's not a God worth worshiping. The Christian claim is not that we understand every detail of God's nature. It's that we have reason to trust the one who transcends it. He is uncreated, eternal, outside of time, yet fully engaged within it. He made the first atom and holds your next breath. He doesn't change, yet he enters our change. He never begins, yet he began something beautiful in you. And maybe that's the deeper truth behind this whole video. You didn't come here just to win an argument. Deep down you came because something inside you still wonders, still aches, still hopes. You're not just asking, who created God? You're asking, is there really someone out there? And does he see me? You're asking if your life is more than random chaos and passing time. You're asking if your pain has a purpose, if your story has a beginning that's more than trauma, and an ending that's more than dust. You're asking if there's someone who's been there all along, even when you felt abandoned. The answer is yes. You were not made for confusion. You were made for communion. You were not made to solve God. You were made to walk with him. And that invitation is still open. So maybe now it's not about the question anymore. Maybe it's about your response. Will you keep searching for answers in places that leave you emptier? Or will you finally turn to the one who is the answer? Will you keep chasing created things? Or will you surrender to the uncreated one, the one who formed you before you were born and knows the number of your days? Not because you have all the proof in the world, but because you've tasted enough of this world to know it's not enough. Here's what I want to leave you with. If you're a believer, let this truth anchor you. When you feel like God is late, remember he's outside of time. When you feel like he's silent, remember he's already in your tomorrow. When the world tries to reduce him to a myth, remember, myths don't hold galaxies together. And if you're a skeptic or searching, I dare you, don't stop at the question. Keep going, keep wrestling. But don't just look at arguments. Look at lives. Look at the mother who forgave the man who killed her son. Look at the addict who found freedom no rehab could give. Look at the dying man who smiled because he wasn't afraid. These are not the results of coincidence. These are the fingerprints of an eternal God touching fragile people and making them whole. So here's the call. If this spoke to you, don't just scroll away. Don't file this under interesting. Stop, sit with it, and ask, what if it's all true? And if you're ready, talk to him, right now. You don't need the perfect words, just a willing heart. Say, but God, I don't understand everything. But I'm tired of running. If you are who you say you are, show me. Change me. I want to know the one who was never created, but who created me on purpose. And if you already walk with him, then walk deeper. Let eternity shape how you speak, love, live, and lead. The God who was never created is writing your story, and he never wastes a single word. So share this with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment about what part of this video shook you or sparked something. And don't forget to subscribe. Because we're not done asking real questions. We're just getting started.